Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today to get you geared up for our all-new class, which will be to build the ultimate GPS tracker. Does that sound good? I hope it does. What I will need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And instead of the usual banter, we're going to jump right into today's program. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this new class that will be coming up and what equipment you will need for that class. Now, in this time slot, up until now, we've been having the Raspberry Pi Pico W class. And in that class, we were using the SunFounder kit, and we have made 122 lessons on the Raspberry Pi Pico W. And in those lessons, I've really taught you most of the important stuff about the Raspberry Pi Pico W. We learned the basics. We learned how to interact with the GPIO pins. We learned how to do threading. We learned how to operate on both cores of the Raspberry Pi Pico W. We learned about the PIO interfaces. We learned about using interrupts. We learned about the state machines and how to use them. And then finally, we made it through pretty much all of the different components that were in that kit. And we kind of were sort of like at a good stopping point for that class. But during that class, I really developed a love for the Raspberry Pi Pico W, so I do want to continue to work on that platform. But rather than continuing with lesson number 123, 24, 25, I thought to just restart and start a new class on a project. And what that project will be to use the Raspberry Pi Pico W to build the ultimate GPS tracker. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. Now, to kind of whet your appetite, I'll show you what I have been working on. I will show you what I have been working on for the last few weeks. And you can kind of see not the starting point of the class and not the end point of the class, but kind of give you an idea of where the class will be headed. And I will show you this. And this is the project as I have it right now. You can see that we've got the Raspberry Pi Pico W. This is the most excellent Adafruit Ultimate GPS version 3. You wonder how you could have a version 3 of the Ultimate GPS, because if it was the Ultimate GPS, it seems like you wouldn't have a new version, but I digress. Then we're feeding the data into the SSD 1306 OLED display. We have a couple of buttons just in case we need them. And because we are going to be wanting to operate completely mobile, we are operating based on the SunFounder Breadvolt. And so that is what we'll be powering. That is what will be powering the project. Now, if we come in and zoom in on the OLED, what you can see is at this point, I call it the Deluxe GPS to go along with our, I guess I should call it the Ultimate in the title. I need to change that title to the Ultimate GPS. And then you can see that it's giving you live in real time my latitude and my longitude. Now, guys, I love you, but don't come to my house, okay? Don't come to my house. I've had people come to my house before, and it's a little bit awkward, okay? So don't come to my house. We'll interact over comments in the chat and stuff, but don't show up at my house. All right, but you now have my lat and my lon. Now, it is also showing me at a speed of 0.33 miles per hour. Obviously, I am stationary here, but the little bit of uncertainty in your GPS location, you can see like that lat value is moving around a little bit. Then it interprets that noise in the position. It interprets that as a speed, and so it reports it as a speed. Now, if we actually started moving, then we would get accurate accurate measurements of like, okay, you're going 5 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour or whatever. But here it is just kind of in the noise. And then similarly, the heading is which direction you're going. And so that would be the angular direction that you are heading. I think probably maybe 0 is north, but I would have to look at that. It could be sometimes 0 is east, but we would have to figure out what the 0 angle is, and then that would show you what direction on a compass that you're traveling. Then also it's showing that we are getting this data from 5 satellites. So as it looks up now, it is seeing 5 different satellites, and with those 5 satellites, we should get a fairly accurate measurement. Now, ideally, if you really want the best positional accuracy, it's great to have like 8 or 9 or 10 or even like 12 satellites. The more satellites, the more accurate your position is and the more stable your position reading is. So now, right now, we have 5. And the reason for that is I am inside, and it is true that I have a grass roof, so I'm looking up through the grass roof, but still I'm in the studio, and there is a lot of equipment around me here. You can see in a lot of electronics and stuff all around this GPS, and so it's not getting a completely electrically clean view of the sky. And so this is not the ideal situation, but 5 satellites is more than enough to get a good demonstration going here. So that's where we are there. And now what else? We can come over here, I hope. Yeah, let's come over here. And I'm at the Google Earth. Okay, I'm at Google Earth. And let's just see if I put those, coordinates in there. So I'm going to put 0.478598.3. Now that is the latitude, and then I'll put a comma, and my longitude is 33.16453, let's call it that. And now let's enter. Oh, it's my thing showed it, but it wants that 0. It wants that 0 on the lat. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's enter that, and let's see where we end up. What is this? Okay, there it goes. All right, I had to point at it in order to do it. So we're going over to somewhere in the area of Lake Victoria, and I must not have typed that in right because that does not look good. So let's come back over here and look at it again. And I'm sure I didn't type it in right. So 478.478 6,367, and then I have 33.1. I put an extra 1 in, 33.16462. Okay, so let's try that. And we'll come back over here where you can see what's going on. So I will try that. It was a typo. I had not typed it in right. Okay, so now we'll come and we're scooting on over, and boom. Okay, there is my location. Now there's a little bit of error there, and that's probably because I don't have more satellites, and I would like to really see, I'm sitting, and you can't see that, can you? Okay. We'll look at it like this. I am sitting right here, and you can't see that either. Okay, I'm sitting right here, and I'm some number of meters off, and so I'm going to see if I can get a better reading than that. And also, like I say, maybe I've made another typo, but let me try again, and let's see here. It's 4786. And then 583. It doesn't help that this number on Google Earth is microscopically small, and then 16456. 16456. Okay, so I'll go like that. Okay, well that got closer. That got us closer to the house. Okay, but again, I am sitting right here, and it's 33,164. 5 and 8622 88622. Okay, you see, as this thing is sitting here, it's getting closer and closer. So you see I'm almost in the house there. But what it is again, I've got all of this stuff, like I'm showing you all of this stuff around me. And you know, there's a camera above it, there's lights, there's electronics all above it. So you're not getting just a really clean, unencumbered view of the sky. And for us to get more and more accuracy, we need more satellites. And you see now I'm actually I've dropped down to 4 satellites. Okay, I've dropped down to 4 satellites. And so the accuracy would not really be increasing with that. Okay, so don't worry about that, because when we're actually doing this for real, we will be getting more satellites and we will be getting more accuracy. And so don't you worry about that. But what we need to do now is we need to get you guys ready for this class. And so what I will need you to do is go over to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com. And then what I need you to do is use this happy little search icon, and you need to search on something like getting geared up for the Ultimate GPS tracker with the Raspberry Pi Pico W. Okay, and I'm going to keep an eye on this. Maybe this thing will get some more. Maybe this thing will get some more satellites before this class is over, and we can see if we can get a more accurate reading here in a minute on my position. But getting geared up for the Ultimate GPS tracker with the Raspberry Pi Pico W. And basically, I have a list here of the stuff that you're going to need for the class. Now, hopefully, most of you guys would have kind of like almost everything except maybe needing to get the GPS, maybe needing to get the Adafruit Ultimate GPS. But if you've been with me in the class so far, you should have the Pico W, you should have the SSD 1306, the buttons, and the Breadvolt, and of course the breadboard. All right, but if you don't, then let's come down here and let's figure out what we're going to need. First thing you're going to need is you're going to need the Raspberry Pi Pico W. You can click and order it there. And I'm going to talk about the things you absolutely have to have versus the things that are kind of nice to have. So $14 for the Pi Pico W with the power cord and a little bit of a case for it. And so that's not bad at all. So we'll add that to the cart. I just kind of want to add everything and see what it comes to if you don't have any of this stuff. If you don't have any of this stuff, then let's go ahead and back out of there. See what the next thing is. Internet's a little slow here, okay? Then you're going to need the Ultimate GPS, and really that's the most expensive thing. That is right at about $30. And so let's go ahead and let's add that to the cart, and then we'll go back. Okay, now what you will notice is the header pins are not soldered on. They come with the item, they come with the breakout board, but they're not soldered on. So I have been making YouTube educational content for about 10 years now, and it's finally come to the day that I'm going to have to show you how to solder, but I've really avoided anything that requires you to solder. And part of it is I really just dread making a lesson on how to solder, because no matter how careful I try to show you how to do it, there are always purists out there that are going to say that people are going to die soldering the way that I solder, or it's this or it's that. It's just like there's this subculture of people that solder, and sometimes they're quite vocal in their opinions. Now, I never claim to be a solder expert. I solder well enough that I can put things together and the projects work, but I solder about as good as I weld. And like when I weld, something will hold together, but it's not very pretty. So I'll show you the basics of how to solder, and it should be enough to get you through this project. So we'll do a lesson on that. Something that I've avoided for 10 years. on this channel. Okay, now you have seen that we are kind of struggling a little bit here inside, and what I am struggling with is, hey, I'm up to 6 satellites anyway. I'm struggling to get those 9, 10, or 11 satellites that you would really like for uber clean measurements. Okay, but we are up to 6. But you see, I've got a grass roof, so with a grass roof, I can look up and see the sky because the GPS will look right through the grass roof. But if you are in a normal house, you won't get a fix. You won't find any satellites if you're sitting inside. So what your choice is, you can do the project outside, or you can put your breadboard in the window. You can put your breadboard in the window and kind of point it outside where it sees a good, nice big swatch of the sky. Okay, and then you can have the USB running to your laptop or something like that. That will work fine. Or like a really, really nice option is to get the external antenna. Now you see, I don't have the external antenna, but the external antenna will let you work at your workstation or whatever in your shop, and then you just put the antenna wherever it needs to be to get a nice clear view of the sky. And it's only about $11. You see, you've got this little cable here, this little pigtail, and what that does is this top part plugs into the GPS right up there. Okay, and then the other end of this SMA connector connects to the cable and the GPS antenna, and so that is what that is. This is optional and you really don't have to have this, but I'm kind of giving you everything, even the optional stuff. The thing you have to have is you have to have the GPS. Now, if we're going to solder, we're going to need a soldering iron. I have a pretty nice soldering iron. My soldering iron was about $150, but really that's overkill. And this is a really neat little one for simple projects. It's more than what you need for this project, and you can see that it's about $18. And what I do like is there's some soldering guns that are maybe $9, but what I really like is to have this stand, and you always put the soldering iron back in the stand because it is so easy to get excited about your project. Put the soldering gun down on your desk, run outside with your project to try this or that, and forget that you left the soldering iron on, and this thing will catch stuff on fire. And so I really like having a kit that has this little stand so that you just have this muscle memory. You always put your soldering iron back in the stand. And then it's also got some other neat little things, like it's got a suction solder remover like this one here. It's really pretty easy to solder, but it's very hard to desolder. And so you get the solder hot and then you mash that button, and this is sort of like a suction thing, and it sucks the solder off while it's melted. And if you don't have one of these, it's really, really hard to unsolder something. Looks like it's got a wire stripper. It's got a little pair of dikes, which is nice. Got various heads for the solder, for the soldering iron, and then it's got a couple of tweezers, a wick, just pretty much everything that you need to get started. And this is by no means a professional soldering iron, but it's one that is enough to get you started and see if maybe you might really love to solder. Okay, so we got that, and if you've got a soldering gun, then great, you don't have to worry about it. Let's find our way back over there. So we have 3 things so far. I hope I hit the add to card on that antenna. So we've got the antenna, the soldering gun. Okay, now if you have not soldered before, I think it would be good to practice soldering, and don't let your first solder job be on a $30 component. So for $12, you get all these perf boards and all of these headers and all these connectors. And these are very, very useful to have anyway, because you might want to put everything together instead of on a breadboard. You might want to put it on this project board and then solder everything in place. So this is well worth it for $12. Okay, so let's go back. I sound like a salesman here, don't I? Really, you need the GPS. And you either need to have a soldering iron or a friend with a soldering iron. Okay, the other thing I forgot is there's these little batteries. And if you look, man, this thing is really feeding me the ads today, isn't it? Okay, and these batteries are $3 for 5 batteries, and that's pretty darn cheap. So I'll add that to the cart. But what you'll notice is that on the back of the GPS, there's this little spot for a little button battery. And you notice I am not using a button battery right now on mine. And so when I turn it on, it can take 5 or 10 minutes to get a fix and to find those first GPS satellites. But if you put the little battery in here and you have a fix, it will keep the fix. Okay, and so next time you come and use the project, it should just boot up immediately with the satellites, and you don't have to wait a long time to find those satellites. You can see I went down from 6 satellites down to 5 satellites right now, so I'm not having the world's greatest day on that. But those are those batteries, and that is pretty well worth it because it'll allow you to get a fix quickly whenever you turn your project on. Okay, so we have that, the button battery, the soldering iron, the practice of soldering. You can order some extra solder just so that you have it. The amount that comes with that little soldering iron is pretty low, and this should last you pretty much the rest of your life there at $8. So we'll add that to the cart. Okay, extra solder. Okay, when you solder, you always want to wear safety glasses. Even with glasses like this, you could have solder come in from the side. And the one thing you don't want is molten hot metal in your eye. And so you want some nice safety glasses. This is like a pack of 4 safety glasses for $10. That is pretty well worthwhile. But if you're going to solder, it's really best practices to use safety glasses. Okay. Now, if you have the kits or you've been taking the class, you already probably have the Breadvolt. But what the Breadvolt does is it allows us to operate mobily. And so you can see that it actually powers the project. So it's a rechargeable battery power unit that allows you to run this thing remotely. And so we probably want to get that. I'm hoping most of you guys have most of this stuff. Okay, now to charge the Breadvolt, you need a Type-C USB cable. Okay, USB cable Type-C. And here's a link to that. It's really hard for me to believe that anybody would not have a USB-C charging cable or data cable like that. But I put that there just because you do have to have it if you don't have it. But I would imagine everybody has that already. Okay, the charging cable, you will need the OLED 1306, the little display that we're seeing here. And here you get 5 of them for $15. It's like, I don't know, probably 1 is $5 or 5 is $15. And so I think it's kind of a good deal to go ahead and get the whole pack of them, because those are really useful for all the different projects. And sometimes one gets broken or one gets burned out. So it's good to have spares. And then if you are an absolute newbie, a complete absolute newbie, and you don't have the breadboard or the jumper wires, then you can go ahead and order this at $14. Okay, wow, that came out to $141. I didn't think it would be that much. Did I have some extra stuff in there? No, that's that. The cable, the Breadvolt, safety glasses, that. Okay, I guess that does come out to be a little bit, hey, they're offering me some deals here right now. Hopefully they'll offer you guys those deals as well. So it says $141. So hopefully, though, most of you guys are not going to need this $14. Most of you guys have the SSD 1306. Most of you have the charging cable. Most of you have most of this stuff. So what I would hope is that a lot of you would only need to order the GPS and maybe the soldering gun. So anyway, I really try to keep these projects and these classes as affordable as I can, but that is what it is looking like right now on this project. So let me come back over here. I'm just wondering if I'm getting any more accurate position, as this thing is sat here for a while. So it's 478693, 478695, and then the longitude is 33.16448, 16448, 16448. Okay, so let's try that. Okay, kind of move me back a little bit more towards the front yard. So again, I'm sitting right here and I'm some number of meters off. And part of that also can be in remote areas. When you live in very remote areas, sometimes there's not perfect alignment between GPS position and the map position. And so what sometimes can happen is the GPS is reading correctly, but the map on Google Earth is not perfectly coordinated with the actual GPS locations. Okay, guys, so that is where we are going. Give me some feedback. It scared me a little bit how much, if you order all those components, it was, but it really is going to be a neat project. And you can see already I am reading the latitude and longitude, and I'm looking at it there with Google Earth. And where I'm really interested is I'm interested in integrating this project where the project is interacting with Google Earth, and you can actually plot your track or plot where you've been on Google Earth from uploading the data from the project. So there's some really interesting things that we're going to be doing. I hope that there'll be some interest in the class. You guys leave me a comment and let me know, is this something you're interested in? Are you interested in us starting to do more significant projects on the Raspberry Pi Pico W? Or just give me some feedback, because I always do enjoy hearing from you guys. And next week what we're going to do is I'll probably jump in, and I'm assuming that you guys will go ahead and order, and at least order your GPS and a soldering gun if you don't have it, a soldering iron if you don't have it. At least get that stuff in place. And then next week what I'll probably do is get a boat. Okay, I'll at least next week give a quick lesson on soldering, and we'll get the little GPS unit soldered up. Then what we'll probably do the week after that, I'll show you how to connect this up and wire it up where you see data spewing off of the GPS. Now at that point, the data will just kind of be gibberish. Okay, it'll just be gibberish. And then the next week, I'll show you how to kind of take that gibberish data and then turn it into what are called NEMA sentences, which are streams of data with useful information in them. The information is useful, but it's not usable as it's just being spit off. So then we have to take the useful information and turn it into usable information. And then from there, you will have your actual latitude and your actual longitude that you could put into Google Earth to see where your location is. Then what I'll be interested in doing is kind of creating data loggers and data trackers, something that could show in real time on Google Earth where you are, and then things that'll just record your position. So at the end of the day, you could kind of replay where you've been. So that's kind of the direction that we're going. I hope it sounds good. It's at this point in the class that I always like to give a shout out to you guys that are standing with me on Patreon. These deep dive type lessons that I'm doing do not get millions of views. So the only way that I can give the in-depth material that I'm giving you is with the support of our Patreons. And what I'll also say is, on classes like this, I always get someone who comes up and says, oh, well, there's a library, and what you can do is you can just plug the GPS into the library, and you can, and it'll just give you the lat long just right like that. Well, yeah, but you could also turn on your iPhone, and you could get your location from that as well. But you see, what I want to do is I want to teach you. I want to teach you what is latitude and longitude mathematically. How does that work? How do you get those numbers from the data that's coming from the satellite? How do you actually understand how things work? And particularly for our younger people, there's no jobs that will pay you to come in and look at your phone and tell say what your GPS location is. Similarly, there's no jobs that are going to pay you to go in and just load up a library and connect 2 wires, load a library, and have a GPS on a breadboard. They're not going to pay you for that. But if you understand how GPS works, and you understand the math, and you understand the engineering, and you understand the programming, then you can get a job where people will actually pay you. So I'll admit, sometimes I get frustrated when people say, oh, well, just use the library, use the app, That's easier. Yeah, it's easier, but it's not something that is a skill people will pay you for. I am sorry for the rant. Let me also say you can help by giving a thumbs up to this video and leaving a comment down below. It'll help me with the old YouTube juice. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. When you do, make sure you ring that bell so you'll get notification when future lessons drop. And as always, share this class with other people because the world needs more people understanding latitude and longitude, and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.